Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game. With me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Kevin. All is tickety-boo.
Good. Yes, last time we spoke, we ended with a brief discussion on how it would go if Kevin Rowland and Yogi Bear were to present this. I'm still slightly shaking. I'd have to say that first Dexter's Midnight Runner album was genius.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Or Gino Us. Ho ho. Shall I stick to the day job?
No, very good. I saw them in the very early days in the Greyhound in Fulham Palace Road, and they were magnificent. And then a couple of years later, off the back of the single, Gino Washington came over and I saw them there as well. So I never saw Yogi Bear. I'd love to have met Yogi Bear. He was, yes. Although it always confused me, he was smarter than the average bear. I don't know how smart the average bear was, really. Because Paddington wasn't that bright, really, and he's probably the only other one. Winnie definitely wasn't. So,
two of them wore hats.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Hats and no other item of clothing, pretty much. Yeah. Anyway, this is one of our special interview pods, Kieran, and it's one I've been quite looking forward to. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it, so you did it on your own. And I think it's fair to say that probably the most enthusiastic interviewee we had in the past couple of years has been Peter McCormack, who took over Real Bedford FC, a Bitcoin guru, and we spoke to him shortly after he'd taken over at Bedford FC and changed them into Real Bedford, and he was a force of nature, Kieran, as he was when he turned up in the Pawson's Arms 3 weeks later before Palace played Liverpool, when he converted several people to his cause. But we promised way back when that we would catch up with him when Real Bedford got their first promotion. And true to our word, you caught up with him for a fascinating interview.
Peter, thanks so much for coming on the show. First of all, congratulations. Trophy winners, league winners. Did you celebrate in a Jack Grealish style with the lads?
Not really. Do you know, it was a really strange one because we ended up beating Langford towards the end of the season, and we kind of essentially had won the league, but there was like a mathematical possibility that if we something like lost our last 4 games and Chennox won their last 4 and turned over a 30-goal deficit, then we could have lost the league. And so we kind of walked off the pitch knowing we'd kind of done it, but everyone was really flat because you knew we couldn't celebrate. So it was probably one of the flattest games we've ever had afterwards. Everyone just kind of went home, and then we had the game against Ampthill, drew and won the league. And we had a good celebration. We all went out that night, but within 24 hours, it was really strange. It's kind of like, okay, that's done. What now?
Yeah, and that must be quite scary because you're now having a step up. Does that mean you've had to change your budget, or is everything on track for next season as far as you're concerned? Is it going to make your summer more difficult than you initially planned?
No, not really, because my manager, Rob Sinclair, said to me, we were talking at one point in the season and something stood out to me. I was trying to talk to him about a game a few weeks away, and he said, look, Pete, I just take it one game at a time. And I kind of realised that while he takes it one game at a time, I take it one season at a time. So the way we set up this plan was we want to get in the Football League. I want to start the season with him having all the resources to means he can compete to win the league. And so by the time we'd finished our celebrations, I'd already done my planning for step 5. I'd done all the planning, everything we needed to do. I mean, there's still lots of implementation, but now it's kind of like I've given him, again, all the resources he needs this year to compete, and I'm now starting work on step 4 and 3. And anyone listening might be thinking, well, you haven't got there yet. What are you doing? But it's more like I'm planning, if we get there, that we will be ready to compete.
Yeah, I know that Paul Barber, who's the chief executive of the club I support, Brighton, when we were in the Championship, he came out on one occasion and said, we are Premier League ready. And that provoked quite a negative reaction, especially from fans of other clubs. But I think having a long-term strategy is absolutely essential, because and no doubt you've been doing your homework in terms of these other steps, is that you have to have things in place in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of what's available for the referees, minimum requirements in terms of what you can do in terms of fans and so on. What do you think is going to be the biggest step up that you probably going to have to look at over, if things go to plan, over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've kind of broken it down into various stages, and I've looked all the way up to the Premier League, which people laugh at me for, but set your goals high. Step 3 is a massive step from 6, 5, and 4. And that's mainly due to the budgets that the teams are spending. I was looking at the likes of Nuneaton and Tamworth and teams like that. There's a massive step up from step 4 to step 3. I actually think the step from 5 to 4 isn't huge. If we were going into step 4 this season rather than step 5, I think we'd be competitive. But step 3, there's a massive jump up. There's teams out there who I assume or have been told have got weekly budgets of £10,000 to £12,000, which is quite significant, and that's a massive jump up from the levels we're at. And then I think every level there, step 3, step 2, step 1, they're all huge jumps. And last year, fortunately for everyone else in the National League, both Notts County and Wrexham went up because they had huge budgets. I mean, Notts County were getting crowds of anything up to 16,000, I think. I mean, when you've got 16,000 people coming through the gate, that's good money. That's going to contribute to the budget you need to be competitive. So they're all significant jumps. I actually think once you get out of the National League into League Two, I think League Two itself isn't too much of a challenge after that. You see a lot of teams go straight through from League Two to League One, and I think it's because I think the National League is a much harder league. I think you've got to spend more. But we're talking way ahead now. Step 3 is the first one I'm worried about, where I look at the size of the crowds we've got, the infrastructure we've got, the business plan, and I'm not there at the point where I think, right, we will definitely have a competitive budget. Last year we did, this year we will. Next year, if we get on to step 4, we will. But step 3, I think, is a big jump up.
And you mentioned budget there. I mean, I think you've tried to position it's Real Bedford. Yep. It is Real, isn't it, rather than Real? Yeah. You've tried to position Real Bedford as the Bitcoin team, and so therefore to target the community in terms of getting interest. Does that mean that you have a very significant proportion of your revenues coming from merchandise sales, streaming, and so on, and perhaps that matchday revenues are lagging behind? I've seen that you've got season tickets £120, concession season tickets £60. Does that contribute much towards the overall coffers, or do you think you found yourself a niche position which you can leverage on going forwards?
Yeah, we found ourselves a niche position. I looked a lot at Forest Green when we put this project together, and what they'd managed to do is essentially almost like a village team that's managed to get up into the Football League. And what Vince has done to build a team around a different kind of identity, because most football teams stand for the same thing. And certainly there's a lot of benefits from that. Being the Bitcoin team, the people care about financial responsibility. It gives us access to a global audience of Bitcoiners who believe, right, this is our team. And it does come with some criticism. Some people pick holes in it. But what I always say to them is we have now people from all over the world buying merchandise with Bedford on it, flying to Bedford to come and watch games. We had 12 guys come to watch us play Holmer Green who came in from Slovakia. And right. Those are people who are staying at hotels in Bedford, spending money in Bedford and contributing to the local economy. But it also just gives us a massive advantage over teams at our level. We sold 2,000 shirts last year, and we're a Step 6 team with essentially a year of history. I know we acquired a previous team, but we're a new identity. We sold 120 grand of merchandise. I mean, that's pretty incredible for the level we're at. But it also gives us access to these sponsors. So what local grassroots teams tend to have is they're a local team. They get local sponsors who talk to local people who come to the game. Well, because we've got a global audience and we stream our games, we can access much bigger companies with bigger budgets who want to target that audience. So it just gives us this big advantage in that we have this income coming in. But at the same time, I think of us as more like a startup as well. We've got to grow our local revenues. We've got to grow our local crowds, and we've got to become sustainable. We've worked really hard on that. We grew when I took over those first couple of months of the previous season, our attendances were like 40, 50, 60 people. We averaged 180 last year, and final game of the season we had 327, and we were regularly in the top 10 step 6 crowds. Our goal next season is to grow that again, and we want to become less reliant on sponsorship and more reliant upon local fans coming to games. But it's just that takes time. And so luckily with the sponsors and the international followers, we just get to accelerate our project.
Right, yeah, right. And there is another team in Bedford Town, isn't that right?
Right.
Do you have a relationship with them? Do you have any pre-season friendlies? Is there any sort of argy-bargy between the two sets of fans of the two clubs, or is it you just happen to be in the same location and it's just a coincidence?
No, there's definitely a fractured relationship. Originally, I would have liked to have bought them because they've got a bit more of a history, but John Taylor didn't want to sell. They were going up to step 3, and fair play to him. He did a really good job getting them up to step 3, and he wanted to see that through. So we acquired the team next door. I think a few of the things I said upset some of them. I said I don't think they have a plan which can get them into the Football League. And Bedford as a town has never had a team in the Football League. For the size town we are, that's ridiculous. We should have a team in the Football League. And so I upset a few of them with that. And, I probably was a bit gung-ho and a bit unfair to them. A lot of their fans definitely don't like us. They they want us to fail. And I think we're probably the first result they check and they hope we lose. But I think a healthy rivalry is a good thing. They were step 3, we're step 6. We're now 5, they're step 4. We're a division away. They've got a good chance of getting promoted back up, though. John is investing in one of the teams, got a good new manager in. He's got Birchie, who was at Leighton, did a great job there. And they've bringing in some great players. We didn't manage to get a pre-season friendly, sadly. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we maybe draw them in the County Cup this year and get a game against them. But there's definitely a local rivalry. And we're doing everything we can to try and catch them and overtake them because, like I said, I want Bedford to have a team in the Football League, and I think we've got a plan that can do it.
Right, brilliant. And you've spoken about promotion and ambitions. We've seen a team from not too far away in the shape of Luton Town go from non-league to Premier League. Is that going to make your job harder because they're going to be generating all of the attention, or and also potentially sucking up fans because of the allure of the Premier League, or can you sort of take an advantage from them being there, saying, well, if they can do it, we can do it, and we're only just down the road. How's your perception of Luton?
I'm pretty neutral on the impact, but I'm absolutely incredible what they've done. I think it's amazing. The first game of football I ever went to was at Luton. My dad took me to see Liverpool play them. It was a 0-0 draw back when they had the old plastic pitch. And I think everything that happened to them falling through the leagues, some of the financial things that happened there was really sad because a lot of my friends are Luton fans. And so to see what they've done coming back from the National League back up through the leagues into the Premier League is incredible. I think it's a bigger achievement than, or as big an achievement as Leicester winning the league. And we should celebrate that. I don't think it will drag people away from us that much. We're trying to build Bedford as either your number 1 team or your number 2 team if you're like a Man U or a Liverpool fan, where you actually, I want to support a local team. But what I think it does do is set the ambition. But it is a bit different. They're coming with a lot of history. They're coming with crowds of plus 10,000. It's a bit like Notts County and Wrexham. Both those teams could end up getting in the Premier League because they have big enough crowds to drive the revenue and big enough brands. We're realistic about this. We have 180 people on average who come to a game, and if we could get that to 350 this year, that would be great. But we don't have thousands coming to us. I think actually Wimbledon's a great example. I can't remember the size of their crowds when they relaunched, but they were good, and that's what helped them because those crowds bring in revenue. And so I'm not. I don't use them as an inspiration we can get in the Premier League because they did it for non-league. But I do use it as an inspiration that we can build local sport and get into the Football League itself, which could take a decade, could take 15 years, but I think we can do it. And like I say, our advantage is we might not have as many local fans, but we do have this unusually large international following for a step 5 team now. Probably already we've got one of the largest international followings of any non-league team in the UK.
Good. I mean, you said you got this expanded fan base, and we've seen other people sort of try to replicate that model, by jumping into the Football League in the shape of Crawley Town. Now, I think it's fair to say that that's been a relationship that hasn't worked necessarily. Certainly in terms of the relationship between club and fan base. Do you think there's any lessons to be learnt from that, or are you in a completely different position because you say you've started at a much lower step and therefore you're in a position where you can effectively build up the fan base who sort of share your values and so on?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key differences between us and them. And I think, if anything, it's rather than us looking at them for things to avoid, it's them. They should be looking at us to see how we've done it. But there's a couple of key differences. Whilst they're essentially a crypto club, whilst we're a Bitcoin club, which I won't go into the details of now, but we don't actually push the Bitcoin thing too hard. We have a meetup before games if you want to come, and if you're a Bitcoiner, you can identify with the club. But we don't push anyone to buy anything. We're not selling anything. You can come to a game and completely ignore the Bitcoin thing. That's totally up to you. Whereas they've been pushing the sale of the NFTs, and so that's one way they've made a bit of a mistake. Secondly, I'm from Bedford, so I'm in Bedford right now. This has so much meaning to me. I've lived here my whole life. I know the town. I know the people. I know the good and the bad side. So I'm connected to this town. They don't really have any connection to Crawley. I also just don't think they're particularly good at what they do. I think the way they've treated the managers haven't been good. The way they've treated the fans, I think, has not been good. I kind of feel like they're almost destroying a really good club. And my expectation is it's got about another year of legs in it until it falls apart. I mean, they could have got relegated. So, no, I don't really look at them. There is this kind of comparison because they're a crypto team and we're like a Bitcoin team. But outside of that, I think we're very different clubs. We're run very differently. I mean, I think I read about their owner being in the dugout on one game, which I thought was absolutely embarrassing. We have a very clear separation of responsibilities here. Rob Sinclair is everything on the pitch, and I don't interfere with that at all. He has his budget, and off he goes, and I'm everything off the pitch.
That's right. I believe one of the owners did come across and to inspire the team. And at the start of the second half, he wandered up to the fourth official to ask, how does this substitution thing work? And whether that's true or not, but certainly that's the story which went out. It's not gone down well. And I'm limited to what I can say because I've had a bit of contact from fan groups at Crawley who are concerned that it's, from you say you've got that historic link with the town of Bedford and you're running it as a football club, and you've got a delineation between that and your Bitcoin interest, where I think there's much more of a merger at Crawley Town, and they have seen the football club as a way of generating product interest, and I sort of barely a week goes by, and I'm not on any soapbox here, where you see a story about the crypto industry connected to football. So we had what happened with digital bits with Inter and Roma, where the clubs didn't get paid. We've got WAGMI itself, and I think you and I both have had issues with somebody who was, I think it was the sponsor of Barnsley for possibly one match, or not even that far in Hex. How do you sort of try to separate your position from these other organisations? Because say you made it very clear that you are Bitcoin only, and the danger is, I think, as an outsider who's not particularly familiar, that it all gets lumped in together, and it makes your job harder, presumably.
Yeah, it does, and it isn't even just in football. It's outside of football. I have to spend a lot of time explaining the differences. I mean, on our Twitter page, it says no NFTs, no ICOs, no Web3, no DAO, no fan tokens. We are just Bitcoin only, and people lump them together because it's a cryptocurrency industry, but most people who are into Bitcoin actually completely separate themselves from this. Bitcoin is a decentralized digital form of money. It is a commodity. It is regulated in most markets. It is used for a lot of different purposes. The Bitcoin mining industry is used in Texas to stabilize grids. So explaining and trying getting that all across to people is very difficult. Whereas a lot of these crypto projects, they're more like penny stocks. They're unregistered securities, and there's this centralized person usually associated with it trying to financially benefit from that. And so there is a complete separation. But I think the best way of explaining it is I put an article up on our website about halfway through last year because people said I'm trying to promote scams. And I put an article up, it's why you should not buy Bitcoin. And most people ask
me,
I
read that. Yeah.
When should I buy it? I was like, you shouldn't, but you should definitely learn about it and learn about money and the meaning of money, because it's quite a rabbit hole you have to go down to you fully understand it. But like I say, the Bitcoin thing is, I am a Bitcoin. I believe in better forms of money. I appreciate a school of economics called Austrian. I do think we are living in a very high inflationary environment at the moment. That does come down to government policy and mismanagement of money. All those things are very obvious to me. And so what I try and do is just maybe, if people ask me, nudge them in that direction. But again, when it comes back to football, yes, we might be the Bitcoin club because the Bitcoin podcast that owns them. But like I say, if you come down to a game, you can pay on the gate with your pounds. You can buy a pint and a burger with your pounds. You can watch the game. You can leave and have no association with it at all, and completely enjoy it. And I think that's possibly why it's working with us, because there is no need for anyone associated with the football club to buy anything. We're not selling anything beyond merchandise, which everyone sells, which is cups and hoodies and shirts. There's no token you buy. There's no DAO you invest into. There's no NFTs. We don't do any of that garbage. So it's very hard to then come back to us and say, well, you're trying to profiteer off this, because we're not. What I'm trying to do is just elevate my town. And fortunately, I'm in the position where I have this global audience I can tap into.
And in respect of Hex, I think it was fair to say I was pretty hostile towards Hex's relationship with football, and I just got abuse on social media, which is par for the course. Yeah, I'm not in your league of social media followers, but you reach a certain level where it goes with the territory, rightly or wrongly. Is it fair to say that the Hex gang took things a little bit further with you?
Yeah, they do. They do, and they have done. I mean, when they found out I wanted to buy Bedford Town, they reached out to the chairman and tried to sponsor the stadium. And so if I'd acquired it, I'd have been stuck with the Hex.com stadium. It is very cultish as a group of people. They are very cultish towards their leader, Richard Hart. And I recently got a bag of actual crap sent in the post. They don't handle criticism well. They see it as a direct attack. But the truth is, I think the Hex currency is down about 99% from its highs. To me, it's just an unregistered security. It's a penny stock. It's a gamble. It doesn't stand for anything which I stand for. Everything I try and do in terms of education around decentralized currencies and why Bitcoin is useful, Hex doesn't stand for any of that. So you end up getting into these kind of like online fights with these people, but now it's just not worth it. I just ignore them. They can do what they want. Richard Hart can spend his money where he wants, but I'm just focused on my mission here for Bedford.
Fair enough. And you've had now the men's team at Real Bedford, and I believe you're starting a women's team and a girls' team as well. How is that going to differ? Do you have the resources? Do you have the facilities? What's the logic behind that decision?
Yeah, so a year ago we partnered with Bedford Ladies and Girls, which is the local Bedford, largest Bedford group of women playing football, and Jill has run them for years, done a brilliant job, and we originally just wanted a partnership with them. I think any modern football club now has to recognise the significant growth in women's football. I think it's commercially a good thing to do, but I also think it's morally the right thing to do. The way I wrote about it in my program notes once, I remember the days when my dad would play football and my mum would come home and wash his kit, and then she would take me to football and wash my kits. Women weren't really playing football back then. It was even illegal at one point. Now they want to play football, and you hear some of these kind of like derogatory remarks that people say, and I'm like, come on, this game is growing quick. The popularity is growing quick. It's our time to give a bit back. And so we wanted to support them. So we brought them all new kits. We've extended that partnership this year. They've now rebranded as Real Bedford Ladies. We're going to be managing the senior first team. And so I'm essentially going to be kind of like chairman, but I guess in some ways, as Jill is the chair of the club, I'm probably more like her director of football for her. But yeah, so we've brought in a new manager. We've set them the same goal, is to try and go and win the league. We've given them the resources. Because they're a charity, we can't pay wages, but we can pay expenses. So we will do. We won't have subs. I believe they're playing for us, our company and our brand. So it shouldn't cost them to play football. And we're going to give them all the resources they need to be as successful as they can. And then we've also got these 20 girls teams aged under 7 to under 16. Again, we're buying them all new kit and equipment and giving them the resources so they can do the best they can. And that for us is trying to build this community around the clubs. It's not even them. There's a local youth boys side called Bedford Park Rangers, and we've given them all new kits. For both clubs, we've given them a budget for coaching to invest in their coaches. And we also have a hardship fund. I think it's at £10,000 now, which anyone whose parents who can't afford to buy boots or the subs for their kids, they can tap into that fund. We're trying to make it so money isn't a reason that a kid can't play football in Bedford. So it's building up that football community in Bedford that ultimately will support what we're trying to do. And also it's just doing that right thing where we should be supporting women's football now.
That's brilliant. That's totally sort of our ethos from day one, is that everybody should be equal in football, and it's a chance for opportunities. So that's really good to hear. Just want to sort of go back to buying the club. I think we spoke to you. Was it January 21?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And then there was a bit of a hiatus. What was the biggest challenge in getting the deal over the line? Because I think that, there'd been this big burst of publicity and then things went a bit quiet. And then there were a few sort of snarky comments coming out from some journalists. And then you bought the club. So from what was the timeline from your point of view, and what were the biggest challenges that you had to overcome?
I think the main challenges to overcome was that this was a kind of almost as low as you can go grassroots club that was run on a shoestring budget, and there was lots of administrative things that needed to be sorted out, things that maybe hadn't been done correctly, because we wanted to get the right legal structure in place to transition the club over. And just look, some of that took time. I mean, when you've got a committee which has, with all due respect, some old guys who've been kind of running it in the past, you got to get them in a room together. There's various illnesses at that age. So just getting all the people together at the right time, to have the AGMs, to have the votes, get the legal structure in place. It just took longer than I expected. I think it took longer than all of us expected. But because we wanted to do everything right, I wanted to use the law firm that I've always used. I wanted to use the accountancy firm I've always used. I wanted to make sure we had the right board/committee our side. And so rather than it taking a few weeks, which I've recently just bought a new company, that took 4 weeks to complete that. This really took 3 to 4 months to get it all right and all in place. And on top of that, I had to do a lot of learning in terms of how football itself is structured, how your relationship you have with the league, the relationship you have with the FA, the various rules. So really, I mean, if anything, it was just my fault. I was probably I treated this like buying a company that you could do it in 4 to 6 weeks with the standard due diligence. No, it was 3 to 4 months with all the things that come up with it being football, because football is kind of unique.
Yeah, I mean, football has got a lot of baggage. I mean, having been through that experience, if there was 3 things that you could do to improve football in terms of somebody wanting to either to buy a club or to progress a club, in terms of having to deal with the local football association, with the football association itself, perhaps the local council, what, if you were advising somebody, they say, yeah, okay, just give us three takeaways, Peter, what would they be?
Well, I think the FA need to sort their systems out. The whole game system itself is very archaic. There's lots of problems with it. I'm in constant fear that we will make a mistake that will have us ejected from a competition or have points deducted. We had a thing come through that we had a player suspended, and we were trying to find out, should he have been suspended or shouldn't he have been? And, if we play a player that's suspended, then if it's a cup competition, you're ejected. If it's a league competition, you have the points deducted. And then we actually ended up finding out that whoever the ref was had put a suspension in twice. And one of them related to a sin bin, whereby if you have 2 sin bins in a game, it's actually, even though you don't get fined for sin bins, it's a 1-match suspension. He'd put 2 sin bins in instead of 1. Right. Just finding that was really difficult. And, with the game coming up, this was our star striker. We wanted to play him, and we were in fear of making a mistake. So I think the FA need to massively invest in redoing the whole game system so you cannot make mistakes which cost you points. There's a lot of administration that goes into it. So that would be my one thing I would say towards the FA, how they can make everyone else's life a bit more simple. Secondly, if somebody's interested in doing this, it is, you have got to have a plan, and that plan has to be a business plan. I'm unapologetic about this, that if we are successful, it's because we're a successful business. And a football club is 2 things. It is a business and it is a brand. And like traditional football people, I know are going to hate that. And non-league people will say, what do you want about? That's not what grass football is about. It is. Every team wants to win their league. And I would say 70% of your chance of winning the league is having the budget to get players in. So you have to be a good business. And so if you want to be a successful football team, you have to write a business plan. And your business plan has to be able to target revenues for you to cover your base costs and then be able to invest. And so treat it like a business. It's not a football club. It is a business. And the third thing, what would be the third thing I would say is, I would say that you need to make sure you have the capacity to do this. I cannot tell you how much work is involved in running a football club. The amount of tiny little details. On a match day, we have to have a program. Okay, we have to have food for away players. We have to have refreshments for committees. We have to have refreshments for the officials. We have to have everything set up for the officials in the dressing room. We have to report the scores. The amount of things we have to do just on a match day alone is massive. Then there's everything to do with the administration of the club. It's unreal the amount of stuff you have to do. So if you want to do this, you've got to have the time. We're fortunate in that I've managed to build a team of very good volunteers who run this club. But there is a lot to this.
Yes, yeah. Myself, Kevin, and Guy, we've just written a book, which is, we're not here to plug our book, but I'm going to plug the book, about taking a side from Sunday League to Champions League. And that's a work of fiction, but we still did an awful lot of research. And I would absolutely echo what you have just said. We didn't physically have to put in the hours, but we went into the local handbooks and to see just how the thickness of the rope and the height of the rope when you start off at the lower tiers and you build up and build up. It is a really tough gig, and it is a labour of love. I guess you're doing it first of all because you say you lived in Bedford all your life and you want to maybe perhaps leave a legacy in terms of this football club. Peter, this has been really fascinating. I really appreciate giving up your time. If people want to listen to your podcast, if they want to find you to either get an increased interest in Bedford or to hear your views on Bitcoin, you are very evangelical, and I mean that in a positive way. I'm evangelical about the cure, and I don't see that being an issue. Where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, well, look, firstly, thanks for having me on again to talk about this project, because it is an important project. And everything you do, football finances is a strange world with a lot of shady stuff that's going on. But if you want to listen to the podcast, it's called What Bitcoin Did. It's on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere else. If you want to follow the team, it's Real Bedford, like Madrid, but in Bedford. And if you want to come down and watch a game, let us know. We'd love to have anyone down and see what we're doing. We're trying to build something interesting here, and we'd love to have you come and see us.
It's easy sometimes, Kieran, to not take the mickey, but to sort of laugh at somebody like Peter McCormack and his enthusiasm. But there's no doubt that initially what he did for his hometown was about his hometown football club. And I've had difficulties trying to work out which has been more important to him, the Bitcoin thing or the Bedford thing. And I think listening to that interview, without a doubt, it's the Bedford thing, isn't it?
Yeah, he's very proud of his upbringing there. He wants good things. The fact that they've now got a women's team and a girls' team, and they're aiming to bring in some 3G pitches. And we had a chat offline after the interview with regards to the budgets and the challenges that they're going to result. And he is very ambitious. He wants to get the club into the National League and into the EFL, and he's very genuine. But he's also done his homework. We're not plugging the book, but you and I did quite a lot of homework with regards to how do you get a club from Sunday League to Champions League, and all of the pitfalls and all of the increments that you have to do when you're going from step 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 and so on. We went through a lot of handbooks and going, holy moly, the people that are doing this for real, they have got my wholehearted admiration, and Peter does too.
Interesting as well, Kieran, when he's such a champion of Bitcoin. And you said it must be very difficult for him when he champions one particular form of alternative currency to see other forms of alternative currency collapsing on a weekly basis. But he took that question head on as well. And I think we should almost do a little announcement at the top of this, to maybe the Crawley Town owners might probably not want to hear it.
Yes. He wasn't impressed. He feels that there's a lot of people who are just not saying on the take, but who are opportunists when it comes to the world of crypto. And given that his stance was taken so severely at one stage that somebody did send him excrement through the post from another what you might call evangelical. I don't think evangelical is the right word, but one group of crypto enthusiasts who are following their leader in a David Koresh style of devotion.
Wow, it's a strange old world out there, Kieran, isn't it? Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you. You can do that by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. Thank you to Peter McCormack, the owner of Real Bedford FC, and Kieran for that interview. We have some very interesting interviews coming up for you in the near future. And if you have a question you'd like answered on our question show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.